So work on these guards is continuing. I've gone through and done both edges of the rear guards now. They're looking a lot better, but every time I look at them, I see more places where I needed to do a bit more work. So, for example, it's probably a bit hard to see, but I can see in here this is a little bit flat, just in the middle there, so that needs a bit more bashing. And you can see it's still all wobbly in the middle, but it is getting there and it is getting smoother. You can see the near side guard is off the car because I've got that over here. And what I've been doing is, again, I've been doing the corners here with my stake dolly thing that I made up. Again, I can still now see places where I still need to tweak it. For example, in here, it's the curve here is not quite right. It's a bit flat in the middle. But I've also started looking at getting the top smooth. And the way I've been doing that is to clamp this in the vise. There's a couple of blocks of wood there holding it. And then what you do is you use one of these files, these body files, and you run that across the surface. You sort of go different angles diagonally like that. And what that does is it takes off the primer and a very, very thin layer of metal, leaving it all shiny, and you can see where all the low spots are because I've still got primer in them. And then this low spot here, you can see there's a line there. That's where my poor technique on the English wheel is coming into play. And probably what happened was I tipped the panel so it wasn't flat against the top anvil. So if you imagine if you tip the panel like that, the edge of the wheel then digs in to the side of the panel like that, and it makes these score lines, which I need to take out. So the way I've been doing that is doing the filing on top here, and then using just the normal hammer and dolly. I've been using this dolly underneath to then sort of flatten out the little dents and the little low spots. So you can see this side I've started doing here, and it's reasonably smooth. This, for example, is the other side where I've just filed it, and you can see there's high spots and low spots all over the place. So pretty much that's what I do. I just keep going over them, keep going over them until eventually they'll be smooth. Hopefully smooth enough. Again, in here I can see the curve isn't quite right. One thing I did was wrapped the handle of this in cloth tape, which is definitely helping, but my blister's coming along quite well there. And also I've been wearing my gloves when I've been doing it, which makes it a bit hard to feel the panel. When you're doing this kind of thing, you run your hand over the panel like this, and you can feel all the imperfections. And one thing I'm noticing as I do more and more of this is I'm actually getting a lot better at seeing where it's wrong just by eye, and also seeing how the metal's moving as I hit it. So it sounds daft, but when you first start doing this, it's really hard to know what you're doing. You're just sort of bashing the metal and stuff happens. And I think with practice, you get better at noticing what's actually going on. And I've started seeing now that I can see what the metal is doing while I'm hammering it, so I know where to place the hammer blows. I'm still not that great at it. You can see in some places where, especially when I start getting tired, I'm a bit sloppy with this, and sometimes I don't hit it flat, and the edge digs in, and I'm putting in all these little dings into the panel, which will come out and they'll all be filled out, but it's just sloppy. There's somewhere where I've filed a bit there. The good thing is, with all this hammering, so these guards are made from multiple pieces that are welded together. You can see one of the welds there. And then the top and the sides are separate pieces. So there's a weld that goes all the way down these guards. And with all this hammering I've been doing, I've only had it split in one place. And it didn't really split. There was just a gap, which I don't think I welded properly in the first place. About 1/4 inch long. And so I just had to re-weld that. the other thing I learnt when doing that is after I welded it, I wire brushed it down just with the wire brush on the drill, and that makes the metal shiny. And when I was trying to hammer it smooth, it's really hard to see what's happening if the metal's not a uniform sort of color. So the silver here it's okay, but when I was trying to do the curve, the bit that wasn't covered in primer, it was really hard to actually see what it was doing and what shape it was. So I had to go and spray that with some primer to get it all back to this sort of fairly even finish. What I've been finding is with the primer on there, as I've been planishing it out on the edges, you can see where you've hit it because the primer goes a sort of slightly lighter grey. Not sure if it's showing up on film here, but which is really handy because you can see where you've been working it. But as I say, this has taken me hours, and so far I'm just doing the rear guards. I still haven't done the front. Oh, you can see there. If I can get the lighting just right, you can see the big score in there, which is from the edge of the wheel where I've been poor with my wheeling technique. That looks bad, but it's very slight. You can see it. You can just feel it. But I'll just keep working all this and try and get it smooth. Like I say, it's not going to be perfect, but hopefully it'll be good enough. And I want the Austin 7 to look used, and it's going to get battered and dinged around, and it's not going to be a show sort of car. It's a zoom around the neighborhood sort of car, take it to the supermarket, that sort of thing, when we're allowed out again. Like I say, I'm still just working on the rears. I'll probably then start looking at how I'm going to mount these. So the front isn't too bad because it actually touches the body. So I've got some closed cell foam sheet and some neoprene rubber type sheet. So I'll cut some sort of gasket out that goes between the body and the guard, because the body's aluminium and the guard's steel. So you don't want them touching each other. They're going to be painted, of course, but you still don't want them touching because, of course, they'll move in relation to each other and they'd rub through and eventually it'll all corrode. So I think what I can do is at the bottom here, I can just bolt it through to the body because it's reasonably flat, and I can bend the edge of this to match the body, which is fairly flat. And with some sort of rubber packing in there, I can just bolt those through. But of course, at the back here, where it starts separating from the body, I need stays, and they will be sort of basically Austin 7 Ulster style. So it's like a round steel disc with a dome in it and then an arm that comes out that this then bolts to. And there'll be a sort of strap inside here, and I've got coach bolts with the domed heads to go through to bolt that strap to the top of the guard, and then that attaches to the body somewhere in here. I'm not sure where exactly. The other thing I will do is eventually make partial fillet type pieces that go in here to fair this in, to fill it in, because it looks very open and you can sort of see all the rear of the brakes and things, which isn't very good. I'm not sure if those should be steel and attached to the guard or aluminium and attached to the body. I'll have to try and figure out what would be best there. What I'm thinking is probably aluminium and attached to the body. Just a sort of panel because it's easy to shape, and then a row of bolts just to bolt it to the skin and have it come up and sort of touch this with a little rubber strip or something along it. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going to be best to do there. The front guard, again, it can probably just bolt at the bottom there. Originally I was thinking I would put in a sort of plate here as a step, but I think as you saw in the last film, these are really strong. So once that's bolted on, it may need a little arm, so it's just not bolted to the side. So there may be a sort of strap across here to give it some strength. So if I just bolted this straight through to the body, if you stood here, it's just going to bend the wing. So there'll be something in there to strengthen it, but you can step on that, no problem. And then at the front, there are, it's a bit dark, it's a bit hard to see, but inside here there are metal, they're called cow horns, and that's what this panel bolts to. So you make a strap that comes on the outside here, and that comes up and across to the guard. And that's also where you mount your headlights, so they get mounted at the front here. There's the headlights I have. I'd quite like to change these or paint them or do something different with them, but for now, just to get the car done, I've cleaned them up. They've got new reflectors in them. I made up new gaskets and things. They've got standard bulbs. They're 6-volt bulbs, which isn't going to work for me because this is a 12-volt car. So I will have to change those, maybe get LEDs, I'm not sure. But those are ready to go on. The other thing I should mention about these guards is when you're hammering this curve around, what tends to happen, I found, is the sides here would splay out like this. The way I fixed that was quite easy. I just took this out of the vise, put it on the ground, and then hit while it's sitting flat on the ground, hit the wire like this. And the wire being quite rigid, it just holds its shape. You just hammer it down. That worked really well, and you can tell when it's flat because all of a sudden it feels solid when you hit it because it's now sitting, both sides are sitting flat on the ground, and you know they're parallel. So this is where I can tweak the side a little bit. I can bend this in or out as I need to fit the body, but still hours of work to go on these. And of course then I have to do the fronts, which are longer. They're going to be a bit of a pain. These are quite hard to, by yourself, they're quite hard to hold and manipulate up against the little stake thing there. But I'll manage.